human. Murdo found his voice shaking as he replied, "We believe it was Mrs. Shaw, sir, the wife of the local doctor who owns the house. He's also the police surgeon, so we got a general practitioner from Hampstead, but he couldn't tell us much. But I don't think anyone could. Dr. Shaw's a neighbours now, a Mr. Amos Lindsay." He nodded up the Highgate Rise towards West Hill. "That house." "Was he hurt?" Pitt asked, still looking at the ruins. "No, sir. He was out on a medical call, woman giving birth. Dr. Shaw was there best part of the night. Only heard about this when he was on the way home." "Servants?" Pitt turned away at last and looked at Murdo. "Seems as if that part of the house was the least affected." "Yes, sir. All the servants escaped, but the butler was very nastily burned, and he's in hospital now, the St. Pancras Infirmary just south of the cemetery. Cook's in a state of shock and being looked after by a relative over on the Seven Sisters Road. Housemaid's weeping all the time and says she should never have left Dorset and wants to go back. Maid-of-all-work comes in by the day." "But they are all accounted for, and none hurt except the butler?" Pitt persisted. "That's right, sir. Fire was in the main house. The servants' wing was the last to catch, and the firemen got them all out." He shivered in spite of the smouldering wood and rubble in front of them, and the mild September rain easing now, and a watery afternoon sun catching the trees across the fields in Bishop's Wood. The wind was light and southerly, blowing up from the great city of London, where Kensington Gardens were brilliant with flowers. Nursemaids in starched aprons paraded their charges up and down the walks, bandsmen playing stirring tunes. Carriages bowled along the Mall, and fashionable ladies waved to each other and displayed the latest hats, and dashing ladies of less than perfect reputation cantered up Rotten Row in immaculate habits and made eyes at the gentlemen. The Queen, dressed in black, still mourning the death of Prince Albert 27 years ago, had secluded herself at Windsor. And in the alleys of Whitechapel, a madman disemboweled women, mutilated their faces, and left their bodies grotesque and blood-drenched on the pavements. The popular press would soon call him Jack the Ripper. Murdo hunched his shoulders and pulled his helmet a little straighter. "Just Mrs. Shaw that was killed, Inspector, and the fire seems, from what we can tell, to have started in at least 4 different places at once, and got a hold immediately, like the curtains had lamp oil on them." The muscles tightened in his young face. "You might spill oil on one curtain by accident, but not in 4 different rooms, and all of them catch alight at the same time, and no one know about it. It has to be deliberate." Pitt said nothing. It was because it was murder that he was standing here in the mangled garden beside this eager and resentful young constable with his fair skin soot-smudged, and his eyes wide with shock and the pity of what he had seen. "The question is," Murdo said quietly, "was it poor Mrs. Shaw they meant to kill, or was it the doctor?" "There are a great many things we shall have to find out," Pitt answered grimly. "We'll begin with the fire chief." "We've got his statement in the police station, sir. That's about half a mile back up the road." Murdo spoke a little stiffly, reminded of his own colleagues again. Pitt followed him, and in silence they walked. A few pale leaves fluttered along the pavement, and a hansom cab rattled by. The houses were substantial. Respectable people with money lived here in considerable comfort on the west side of the road leading to the centre of Highgate, with its public houses, solicitors' offices, shops, the waterworks, Pond Square, and the huge, elegant cemetery spreading to the south-east. Beyond the houses were fields on both sides, green and silent. In the police station they welcomed Pitt civilly enough, but he knew from their tired faces and the way the juniors avoided his eyes that, like Murdo, they resented the necessity of having to call him in. All the forces in the London area were short-staffed, and all police leaves had been cancelled to draft as many men as possible into the Whitechapel district to deal with the fearful murders which were shocking all London and making headlines across Europe. The fire chief's report was all laid out, waiting for him on the superintendent's desk, cleared for Pitt. He was grey-haired, quietly spoken, and so civil that it accentuated rather than hid his resentment. He had a clean uniform on, but his face was pinched with weariness, and there were burn blisters on his hands he hadn't had time to treat. Pitt thanked him, making little of it, so as not to draw attention to their sudden reversal of roles, and picked up the fire report. It was written in a neat copperplate hand. The facts were simple, and only an elaboration of what Murdo had already told him. The fire had started simultaneously in 4 places: the curtains of the study, the library, the dining room, and the withdrawing room, and had caught hold very swiftly, as if the fabric had been soaked in fuel oil. Like most others, the house was lit by gas, and as soon as the supply pipes had been reached, they had exploded. The occupants would have had little chance of escape unless they had woken in the earliest stages and left through the servants' wing. As it happened, Mrs. Clemency Shaw had probably been suffocated by smoke before she burned, and Dr. Stephen Shaw had been out on a medical emergency over a mile away. The servants had known nothing until the fire brigade bells had disturbed them, and the firemen had set ladders at their windows to help them out. It was nearly 3 o'clock, and the rain had stopped, when Pitt and Murdo knocked at the door of the neighbour immediately to the right of the burned house. It was opened less than a minute afterwards by the owner himself, a small man with a fine head of silver hair brushed back from his forehead in leonine waves. His expression was very earnest. There was a furrow of anxiety between his brows, and not a vestige of humour in the lines round his gentle, precise mouth. "Good afternoon, he said hastily. "You are the police. Yes, of course you are." Murdo's uniform made the observation unnecessary, although the man looked askance at Pitt. One did not recall the faces of police, as one did not of bus conductors or drain cleaners, but lack of uniform was unexplained. He stood back and aside to make way for them readily. "Come in. You want to know if I saw anything? Naturally, I cannot think how it happened. A most careful woman. Quite dreadful. Gas, I suppose. I've often thought perhaps we shouldn't have abandoned candles. So much more agreeable." He turned around and led the way through the rather gloomy hall and into a large withdrawing room, which over a space of years had been used more and more often as a study. Pitt glanced around it with interest. It was highly individual and spoke much of the man. There were 4 large, very untidy bookshelves, obviously stocked for convenience and not ornament. There was no visual order, only that of frequent use. Paper folios were poked in next to leather-bound volumes, large books next to small. A gilt-framed and very romantic picture of Sir Galahad, kneeling in holy vigil, hung above the fireplace, and another, opposite it, of the Lady of Shalott, drifting down the river with flowers in her hair. There was a fine model of a crusader on horseback on a round wooden table by the leather armchair, and open letters scattered on the desk. 3 newspapers were piled precariously on the arm of the couch, and clippings lay on the seats. "Quinton Pascoe," their host said, introducing himself hastily. "But of course, you know that. Here." He dived for the newspaper clippings and removed them to an open desk drawer, where they lay chaotically skewed. "Sit down, gentlemen. This is quite dreadful, quite dreadful. Mrs. Shaw was a very fine woman. A terrible loss. A tragedy." Pitt sat down gingerly on the couch and ignored a crackle of newspaper behind the cushion. Murdo remained on his feet. "Inspector Pitt and Constable Murdo," he said, introducing them. "What time did you retire last night, Mr. Pascoe?" Pascoe's eyebrows shot up. Then he realized the point of the question. "Oh, I see. A little before midnight. I'm afraid I neither saw nor heard any...